everyone, it's Paula from Paula Quilting. Welcome back to my channel. Today another tutorial in series of the binding and how you can finish your quilt. I've got the video playlist created called Quilting Tips, where all of those tutorials are going to be saved into, so I will leave that in the description below you so you can go there and check the other tutorials if needed. So in one of the tutorials I've covered how to sew the binding by machine, the first side, and depending where you want to finish and how you want to finish, either by hand or by machine, you will either sew it on the back or on the front of your quilt. And I also explained in the tutorial how to sew it so your binding is even on this side and on the side where you put it by machine. Now, by choice, I've chosen to sew it so it's smaller on the back, because I will be finishing by hand at the front and I wanted to have a wider strip, but you can adjust it accordingly, so you can review that video. I will leave it in the description below as well. So as mentioned, I have sewn my binding on the back of the quilt by machine, and now I'm finishing it on the front by hand using a big stitch. So I'm not covering anything, I want it to be quite visible. I'm using for that pearl cotton thread. It's the one which is used for crocheting. It's fairly nice and thick thread to use, and I bought a nice box with like lots of colors because I will be using it for the hand quilting as well in one of the future tutorials. So what you need is a thimble. It's the first thing you want. Sharp needle with the big enough eye so you can put your thread through. The length of the thread, I normally go around not longer than my length to my elbow. It's just because it will start twisting if the thread is too long. Put that away. Just normal knot on the end of the thread. And you can see I've started putting the thread already. So if you're just starting, you want to you can go from the bottom and just come directly where you want the binding or what distance you want to have it on, so the end will be covered by the end of the binding, and you just carry on. If you stopped somewhere because your thread ran out, then obviously you finish the edge there. I just went here a little bit further in the distance and I just put the knot there to hold the thread. Now when I'm going to be starting, I will backtrack at least two of the stitches here, and then come out again in the same spot as the second to the last stitch. And it's good to check on the back if your thread didn't pull through. It didn't. And then I'm going again on those two stitches as they were before. Thimble here, very good to push through. And then I'm starting my new stitches. As much as you can, you want to make those stitches even, but we are not going for the machine look, we're going for the hand stitch look, so they can be uneven because that just shows it's done by hand. Every few stitches you would like to go on the back and check whether you didn't pull through on the fabric, because if you did, you can quickly unstitch few and redo it. So you can use some wonder clips to hold the binding for you ahead of where you're going to be working, so it holds it nice and flat for you. Again, I did few stitches. I'll just go back and see if, just in case, that nothing pulled through. The stitch length, it's probably around an 8, anything between an 8 and a quarter in my case. You may like to do smaller or bigger stitches. It really is a preference and what the look you're going for. So just maybe do some testing and see which one you like the best, and that's what you will use. I did use on my previous quilt embroidery thread as well, 3 strands, and it did kind of finish very nicely. I will show you at the end of this video how it looks. The only thing you need to remember about the embroidery thread is that they will bleed the color. So just be mindful about that. So I used green color on kind of very scrappy binding, so it really didn't show at all, because I also used color catchers when I washed that quilt first time, and the only colors on those color catchers were the green color from the that binding thread. So just be mindful about it. If you use probably like a cream thread or something like that, or white thread, that obviously won't make any marks. But any color, especially like reds, blues, greens, dark greens, they will leave the dye out. So just keep in mind if you want to use that. Here you go. I kind of pulled through thread too far, and I can see a bump here, so that's from the binding itself. So what I will do, I will take the needle out and I will pull the thread back, because obviously I don't want that one thread to be visible there. Yeah, that was the one. And I will just rethread the needle again, and I can carry on. I do normally check about 3-4 stitches, because I don't want to go back more than that if something you know, pulled through on the other side. Okay, here I'm getting to the end of my thread, and I would like to finish it off. So as mentioned before, I'll just go in with that last stitch, but then I will come out towards the edge of the quilt itself, so you can see somewhere here, and I will just kind of back stitch here a few times to secure that thread, and just loop it. You don't even have to cut the edge, because that will be all hidden under the binding when you add the next threads. So now I will add the next part of the thread, and I think we're getting close to the corner, so I will show you how I finish that. So as before, I'm going in 2 stitches back, just double check it didn't pull through. Just went over those last 2 stitches again, just secures better that part, and I can carry on with the rest. Just make sure when you're pulling your thread you don't warp the work you've done. You want to keep it nice and flat. It should be tight in the way that there's no puckering anywhere, that the thread doesn't stick out. But it should not kind of make something like this either. It should be nice and flat. And again, double check on the back. So you can see it's actually quite quickly to finish it by hand that way, because you don't have to worry about hiding the thread. So it's actually easier. And then doing that on the left side and trying to hide the thread. Though I've got a tutorial about it as well, with like shortcut a little bit where you do 2 stitches at the same time, so it goes quickly as well. So I will link it all in the description below. Okay, we've arrived to the corner, and there's many options here what you can do. You can either come to here and just go straight directly down. You can come here and make like a cross shape and then go, or like I finish on this quilt, I actually did some stitches, small stitches, just to, I like to secure it better. That's just my preference. I did few stitches like this and then gone this way, or I will show you that other quilt I've mentioned, what I did there. There were similar stitches, just much bigger. So really it's your preference how you want to finish your corners. And I will just repeat what I did in that other corner here already. So after I've did this first one, I just went to the very top of that corner and instead of going up with my stitches I will be going down again, but it is a preference how you want to go about it. So a few small stitches here, they're all visible, and it's just catching those two bindings together and the layer below of the quilt as well if possible. It will definitely make sure that binding will not go anywhere. And then when I do my last stitch, I will just come out somewhere here to carry on with my straight stitches on the other side of the binding. Here you go. And I will carry on here until the whole quilt is finished. So let me just quickly show you the other one. I finished with the embroidery thread. This is all been washed, so the quilt is now a bit crinkled. That's the effect we've got after washing. So you can see I used a green embroidery thread, and the corners very similar to what I did with this quilt. Is just I've got, instead of finishing my thread kind of at the edge of the corner, I just went over it and then I came back on this side. This is how I did those two quilts. With the third one, when I will be finishing, I might do something else there in the corner. Like I said, it's all preference. Thank you very much for joining me today for this quick tutorial about finishing binding by hand at the front side. I hope it gave you some ideas about how you can finish your own quilts, but like I mentioned, it's all preference. So if you work out your own design using that big stitch, by all means go for it if that's what you like. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.